Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in once again. This is Kyle Ash, the student of the game of Fans First Sports Network, bringing you the Duval Dive, another off-season edition. As we prattle through lists, we're going to be checking in, talking about some stuff. Early mock drafts are dropping. What do the air quotes experts out there think the Jags are going to do? And more coaching search action. By the way, if you haven't seen yet on the Duval Dive, we've been doing a daily series. I say we, but the one driving that train is my personal champion, Travis D. Holmes, a Big Cat Country, going through and giving you a profile, a verbal dossier, if you will, of all the major coaching candidates that have been requested to interview, ranging from Ben Johnson to Liam Cohen to Aaron Glenn and others. Make sure you check that out on the podcast feed there to find that at Apple Podcast or on Spotify as well. Anyways, with all that in mind, we've got a fun show for you, catching up with things tonight. But before we get into it, I would be remiss if I don't bring in my man, the guy who has my back to keep me honest with the Duval Devout, my personal champion, Big Cat Country Zone, Travis D. Holmes. What's going on, my man?
Good evening. Good evening. I'm generally good, bro, but I'm getting ready to quit this narcotic that we call Florida winter, because I'm not used to this, bro. I'm just not. I was not bred for this. I was raised in Florida. They promised me sunlight, bro. This ain't it.
Listen, when I said 40s in Florida, I thought I was referring to my age, not the temperature. I'm with you on that. By the way, excellent job this past week. You were on Locked On Jaguars with our good friend Tony Wiggins, T. Wiggs, and a lot of conversation there about the coaching carousel. I thought you did pretty well. And Robert jumps in talking about the Florida weather. It's cold as beep. He's got a point. He comes into let's go T-Mac and BTJ and Ben Johnson's mind. You obviously know which coaching candidate he's talking about there. We're talking about Ben Johnson a little bit later there, Robert. So make sure you get ready for that. But first, let me get off the ground with this. And if you haven't seen the article yet on Fans First Sports Network, make sure you check it out. But I'm not necessarily a fan of his work per se, but I am aware of the draft guru OG himself, ESPN's own Mel Kiper, and he and Field Yates got together, did what they called the first mock, the top 18 teams in the draft that had been determined to that point, because we didn't have playoff games when this dropped. They made the first 18 picks, and Kiper and Yates did alternating picks and played GM. As it turned out, Field Yates was the AD that broke the hearts of many Jaguar fans, because when he had the Browns, he had Travis Hunter going to Cleveland. A lot of Travis Hunters there, very unhappy. Lou, good to see you in there. I could tell you that they had Cam Ward going to your Titans. Good to see you jump up in there, by the way, my guy. But at number 5, something I did not expect to see necessarily was Abdul Carter out of Penn State being pulled. There's the chuckle. I knew Travis would have something to say about it. Abdul Carter at Penn State. Now, the surprise was that Carter hadn't been picked previously by not by the Giants. Field Yates had Shedeur Sanders going, Mel Kiper had Shedeur Sanders going there. Field Yates had selected an LSU guard to go to the Patriots. An LSU tackle to go to the Patriots. Campbell, I believe was his name. But then Kiper selected Abdul Carter, and his logic was this, and then you can let me know what you think, Travis, because he acknowledged the existence, of course, of Josh Hines-Allen and Trevor Walker already being in place. Bookend sack gainers, Trayvon getting 10 sacks last year. Josh Hines-Allen had 8, though he didn't finish the season. I'm pretty sure he would have gotten 2 more in the game potentially, on that week 18. So it's not like 10 wasn't a possibility. But he acknowledged that, but he said that Abdul Carter was a guy that he couldn't pass up. He was taking best available over team need clearly here. And it was kind of those, I felt like he was hinting that he could step back and not only put his hand in the dirt and rush the quarterback, but also kind of float around and maybe be a jack, air quotes, type player. I don't know how much I buy that. I'll say this. I asked that question of T. Wig of whether he could fill that role. And T. Wig's fashion, he said, well, it depends on the DC, which he's absolutely right. Shout to T. Wigs, by the way. But Travis, 5th pick, Abdul Carter. What say you, my friend?
Well, Wig, hey man, Wig knows his stuff, and when I said dang, I said dang because that's exactly my response. That's exactly where I was going with it. I'm like, well, it depends on the defense you're running. Let's start there, because if the Jaguars all of a sudden just found a solid, a quality nose tackle, whether in the draft or in free agency, there's a conversation to be had about them going back to that 3-4. And all of a sudden, we are having these conversations about, well, now you can move guys around a little bit more there. You could have Josh Hines-Allen or Abdul Carter or Walker or whoever you want to kind of float, to kind of be in coverage, because there's always going to be a different guy coming. Like, there's a few more things as far as manipulation of the defense that you can kind of do there. So I'm not necessarily off that train. But if you're a 4-3 defense, you can't go from spending, what was it, $13 million a year with Armstead playing edge for 50% of the snaps, to moving him inside, to drafting a top 5 edge, to then play 50-60% of the snaps, best case scenario, because again, you got Trevor Walker and Josh Hines-Allen sitting there. That's a rough sell. That's a rough sell for that pick, but it's not to say it's impossible. Again, you want infusion of talent, but I would really hope that it would be a cornerback if they're even remotely in the same tier of player, like a Will Johnson or something like that. You probably want to go that route. That's just my personal opinion, but who knows? You can always do things in free agency.
The corner wants to go with the DB, even though he with me has acknowledged the biggest hole is still defensive tackle. And that's the part that killed me in particular. Graham was the next pick off the board to the Raiders. The guy who I would have had Jacksonville pick. Kuiper had him on his as his 3rd player overall. And while I agree with the strategy of player over need, the right mix of, hey, the next guy on the list fits a need, I think kind of marries those two things there too. And I have said at length that defensive tackle is a need, has been a need, even with Folorunso Fatukasi on the roster a few years back. He was good, but they still didn't have enough in that middle spot. And I'll put it this way. It's clear that Eric Armstead is not the player he used to be. I don't think it's fair to expect that of him at his age and injury history, by the way. But so we make the point about the 3-4 defense, which you obviously know. That guy who is that nose tackle, the point has to be made. Anybody who could play the position, in my purview, isn't really on the roster yet. Would you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely not. Yeah, we don't have that guy on the roster.
So then there's another need you have to fill in the meantime. And where do you get that from? I don't know. There's too many questions to make Abdul Carter work while you're already throwing a butt ton of cash and a top overall pick at that position already. That is, unless Jacksonville is acknowledging that they're moving off of one of those guys sooner than later, maybe even as soon as this offseason. And I've had people hint to me, by the way, hey, they should trade Walker. What are we doing? But it's not great to me as far as what's going on in that franchise. It's not as bad as, let's say, I don't know, like let's say the Commanders had the first pick and got another quarterback. Like it has that kind of feel to it. You know what I'm saying?
But I'm okay with giving yourself an infusion of talent, or giving yourself something that was a kind of a strength to making it just insanely dominant. Like, I am okay with that as long as you can give me at least average play at the 2 defensive tackle positions. At this current moment in time, the Jacksonville Jaguars can't promise that. And if you're a head coach who is coming into this kind of situation, you don't want to just throw away your first season. So I would say you're probably going to go, unless they go overboard in free agency at defensive tackle. If they were to do something like that, like truly, like what we thought the defensive front was going to be for the Jacksonville Jaguars last season, going into the season, when we thought they would have Eric Armstead playing defensive tackle, everyone was like, this is obviously and easily one of the strongest position groups on the defense. That was a conversation going into last season. Let's assume for a second, or pretend for a second, that Eric Armstead truly is going to play significant snaps at defensive tackle now, 60-70% of snaps. Okay, and you have Devon Hamilton and Mason Smith rotating at that other defensive tackle spot. That's not bad, especially if you have any kind of growth from Mason Smith. Again,
Well, we'll need a
but if you're a
lot from a guy
newbie,
who was inactive for how many games to
right?
suddenly at the end playing. It's a leap, Travis.
But if you're a new DC coming in and seeing the performance that they put on tape last season, yes, playing some guys out of position, yes, sitting some guys in key moments or multiple, rotating guys and all this craziness, but nevertheless, seeing the performance that they put on tape, are you willing to risk your career potentially being fired after one season? Like a la Ryan Nielsen situation,
May just be, yeah, exactly.
by just depending on development and growth from players that you didn't bring in, that you didn't personally coach, and just hoping that it was coaching on the last guy. I don't see any reasonable, an NFL defensive coordinator worth their salt that's going to be willing to do that without saying, at least bring me one NFL veteran above average defensive tackle, or give me a higher draft pick at defensive tackle. I just don't see that. And not if you're risking your money in your career. So I see them having an abundance of talent at that defensive tackle position, whether either free agency or in the draft, because I don't see a guy putting his job on the line based on just what we've seen on tape in 2024.
Okay, let me go. Hef with another drop in here in the comments. Good to see you, Hef. I can understand it. Will linebacker in base. Move Foyer back to middle linebacker. Nickel could still be the Will and Buzz to flat or edge on true pass rush sets. So like Mel Kiper, he's kind of relying on that, hand out of the dirt, 2 foot or 2 foot.
And I don't mind it. Honestly, I don't mind it. I don't care if it's 3-4-4-3. I don't care if it's man or if it's zone. I care about just work. Because a lot of folks say that all the time. They'll just say, like, hey, I want to run a 3-4. I want to run a 4-3. I want to run man, or I want to run zone. I don't care what you want to run. Does it work? Because these, you have defensive teams that make these 4-3s and 3-4s work all the time. They make man and they make zone work all the time. Do you have the personnel to run it? Just make it work. So at the end of all of this, I don't care which one they run, as long as they are a coach who is able to communicate, make sure he has the player's ear, make sure they're not just like tuning him out, and that they're actually being able, and they have the right personnel to run this defense. I think they can run any of these things with a few changes. The secondary is the major one, man. The secondary is the one we're going to have to hammer on and talk about, because we know we need an infusion of talent at safety. And we definitely need an infusion of talent at that second outside corner position. That's just what it is.
Yeah, I mean, for as good as Jarian Jones was, there's just been too many times that there's been injuries. Hef drops in too. He did that at Penn State.
Yeah,
and he's not. Yeah, he mentioned Darby too. I say Jarian because he's just as, if they part with Darby, you can't rule out Jarian Jones getting promoted. He had that kind of year, I think. I don't know that that's their first choice that they want to do, but I wouldn't take it off the table. And yeah, the reason why I took the time to mention Hef's point was it also reminded me that with Trayvon Walker, when he was first drafted, they didn't immediately use him the same way he was used in Georgia. So like there's that concept of, there's evidence to be had that can work. But I'm like you, I don't think the supporting cast can support. Would you change the entire defense for just this one guy? I don't know, man. I don't know if Abdul Carter's that kind of guy.
That's exactly what we. So if you're saying you wouldn't change the defense for that guy, you'd have the decision before the draft ever occurred and before free agency ever occurred of what defense you were going to run. So whether it's 3-4-4-3 man zone, so you're not changing it for that guy. You know what defense you're going to run. In that case, you'll be a 3-4 coach that's coming in and say, all right, cool, I am going to run this defense, and this is what I'm going to need, Mr. General Manager Trent Baalke, or Mr. General Manager Mike Greenberg, or whoever just happens to be the general manager at that point. We'll figure that out in the next few weeks.
We'll just say General Manager X for the moment, just so you know.
But yes, Mr. Whoever it is, this is what I'm going to need to be successful. Do you want a 32nd ranked defense again or not? This is my sheet of things that I need, and one at the top of that list is a nose tackle, and another one of those things is probably a rotational defense, a designated pass rusher. And don't trade him away for a 6th round draft pick in the offseason this time.
Yeah, please.
Can you give me that? Yeah.
No, but the reason why I say what I said about changing it for the guy, you're right. The decision would be made by then, but I feel like if you're going to make that change in scheme or alignment or whatever it is, you need that nose tackle piece in place first, because without that, you ain't got nothing. And I don't think we said it earlier. I don't think Armstead's that guy. I don't think Mason Smith is that guy. I don't know that they have that guy in the roster yet. And so then where would you get him? Would you do kind of like you did with the receiver core in you got rid of Calvin Ridley, but you didn't have his replacement until you drafted BTJ, and you just didn't really tell anybody what you were doing, and only the smarter minds like us could figure it out. There's not been enough movement yet to know how they would address that, if that's even what they're doing. But I think the real correct answer is you and I agree on, which was a stipulation of the mock draft in question. They're not doing trades. This 5th pick is getting traded. Of that, we are both pretty sure, I think.
They're going to try.
They're going to try. Again, that's a good point.
They're going to try. Whether or not there's someone who's going to be willing to give them what they want to get out of that spot, another conversation. We're going to kind of figure that out. But I think trade down is always the goal, as long as you have a partner to dance with you. So we'll see if there is one available. But we got time to talk about that. Yeah,
especially if the GM is still Trent Baalke. But
I know that's what makes it hard.
I don't want to put that into the universe yet for the sake of the Duval Devout at large. So
they already are not happy about the fact that he might still be in the paint. So we'll see what happens with the Liam Cohen, with the Ben Johnson, second interviews, assuming they occur, the in-person interviews, and what that results in for the GM search. The fact that the Jaguars are, reportedly at least looking into the backgrounds of potential general manager candidates, lead to believe that there is at least a potential for Trent Baalke to not be the general manager, but maybe be somewhere else throughout the organization, or just be going somewhere else, vacationing in Aruba, whatever. So that's the hope, that's the goal. But that could also be Jaguar fans and reporters coping, because we've heard this retirement thing, he may retire 2 years in running, or he may be fired on Black Friday. Well, we've already heard that. So
the kings of wishful thinking. Yes.
Yeah, it could be all the things or none of it. So I'm not getting my hopes up. I'm just going to see where this thing lands between all these top candidates, and kind of just take it from there.
So with that, let's transition over to this. So obviously we had mentioned the series of coaching dossiers that Travis D. Holmes has been doing, which, by the way, check out the series on BigCatCountry.com as well. They've been doing that as well. Shouts to Gus Logan, other friends of the show, including our personal champion, Travis C. Holmes. I want to get into this, though, because in mentioning Trent Baalke, there's a whole other question. And I know for one that Byron Leftwich was interviewed in this cycle. It could be debated it was for Rooney Rule purposes to make way for Mike Vrabel. That's a separate conversation. But the moment I saw Byron Leftwich get the interview, I think you and I started talking about, isn't it interesting that he's interviewing somewhere that doesn't have Trent Baalke as a GM, right? With that in mind, as coaching interviews are taking place, the Jags have fielded a number of people. How much of a deterrent? Because Ben Johnson, I think, is the favorite amongst the Duval Devout at large. You and I have had conversations about how legitimate we think the chances are of the Jags getting him, but how much of a deterrent is Trent Baalke's existence in that front office today for Ben Johnson in particular? Because I feel like, I don't know why exactly, but I get the feeling that all these things that are coming out, and listen, credit to 1010XL. I saw an interview, I forget with whom it was, but they were talking about backbiting and stuff that here perfect timing.
Multiple people have mentioned the backbiting kind of conversation on various 1010 XL
There you go. Thank you.
interviews.
It was Jason Cole that was
Yep.
talking about he was being interviewed
Over
on
this
1010.
past week.
Right.
I mentioned it about a week and a half ago on
Yes, you
Hacker
did.
After Dark on 1010 XL. Got
Mhm.
all the flack in the DMs and
Shouts to 1010 and Hacker, by the way.
random burner accounts that's probably Trent Baalke or his relatives talking about the fact of who are your sources and who's telling you that this is happening and how do you know and all this other nonsense. And I'm like, because if I had zero sources, common sense tells me this is happening. Is this and that's not even the fact of the matter is that obviously I'm talking to people in the building. Obviously, everyone has this kind of opinion. This is not new news. This is not new news for fans. This is not new news for media. This is not new news for anyone. Just everyone's not willing to say it out loud. Whatever. It is what it is. And now over the scope of this last week and a half, we're all saying the same things that folks frankly said last offseason in these same conversations. So it is what it is. We know what's happening in the building, and it kind of is what it is that that Shad simply doesn't see it. He's the guy married to the good lady who's always angry and always has this mean face, and he's like, I don't know what y'all talking about. She's so nice. And I'm like, dude, she is mean as I don't know what. You just don't get this because you're in love.
That's a fascinating analogy, actually. Either that or it's a willful ignorance kind of thing. Like there's something that, and we've touched on this too. There's something that Trent Baalke does that Shad likes. We don't know exactly what it is. Who knows? Maybe he makes a wicked chicken cacciatore. I have no idea. Okay, but I just pulled that out of the sky.
Orders very specifically and deliberately. Like he crosses T's and he dots I's. He is corporate guy 101.
Now you're making him sound like Shad Khan is a Jerry Jones in his own right, but I digress.
Well, I won't say Jerry Jones in his own right, because I want to be clear in saying this. Like, again, if you're someone who's worked in corporate America, you know you have those people that they will do exactly what the manager tells them to do, right in line. They ain't doing nothing extra. They ain't doing nothing less, but they're going to do exactly that. They might not be the greatest at their job, but you know what? The manager trusts them to they're going to dot them T's and cross them I's and CYA at every turn. And you will never be able to fire that person. You know why? Because they always CYA and they always dot them T's and cross them I's, and they will always have an answer. Like, you have those people that they're never the best, but they're never the worst, but they're going to stay right at that line of average to below average, just so you can't get rid of them. That's who Trent is. So Shad's gonna always hammer the fact home that he's a great drafter. Great. He's the okay drafter. I mean, that's kind of what Shad said in his press conference. He is the good drafter. He didn't mention free agency though. You see that you heard that, because if he had, he would have been like, yo, he's wasting my money like crazy though. That's probably what he would have said. Yeah, so he didn't comment on that, but he did mention the fact that he's a good drafter, and he's gonna focus on those positives, because those positives are what Trent is giving him, is feeding him. Because again, Shad is not going to look into the details like that, because that's not his job as the higher manager. With a middle manager, I'm looking at this like a high manager, middle manager mindset. Again, for those in corporate America, and I think that's how he's running it, and that's how he sees it.
Well, but at some point, to keep your corporate point too, because it's something else I've done in my time and worked in corporate America, at some point the productivity has to come to pass. Now, granted, the Jaguars as a proper organization don't answer to shareholders in the same way unless you're counting the fans. And if what we've seen on this show during our emergency episode involving Doug Peterson's firing, if what we saw in the comments about people wanting to pull their season tickets and all those things really come to pass, I think that's what it's going to take to fire somebody like that. You know, you mentioned Baalke there. Obviously, this is the target, but in corporate America, the only thing that gets anybody cut is when the bottom line starts to fall too.
Right. And that's the part that stinks, is that's not who Shad's customer is. And I can't speak for Shad Khan, but I can speak for NFL owners as a general group. Is that just to be fair to Shad specifically? This is not about him. This is about the NFL owners. They're the people that their customer base is not the fan. The fan, like those funds are collectively shared throughout the organization, throughout all the 32 organizations. Their money is coming from the TV money, and so that's not what drives them, I guess, in that way. Like, just not being an embarrassment, that probably does it for a lot of these guys if they have major egos. That's a big one, especially if you're embarrassed in front of your friends, like if you're getting demolished in London or whatever else. Like, I can see something along those lines. But for the most part, it's about money, man. And the first thing first is Mark Lampin is balling out of control, doing his job. So that business side of the Jaguars, they are doing well, and they got the stadium, and they got the hotel, and they got the investments throughout the city, and they're doing it on that part. The other side of that coin, the performance on the field ain't happening, and he's been failing at that part. But he's the main person. He can't blame Trent Baalke. Folks are blaming Trent Baalke for issues that are Shad Khan's. Honestly, like Shad ain't gonna fire himself. If you want to pay me,
this is why I made the Jerry Jones point, right? Who have we heard that line
however
from
many
more than
millions of
Cowboys
dollars
fans?
you want to pay me, you can pay me that, and I will show up every day for you to abuse me or whatever you need to do, and I'm gonna keep on showing up every day as long as that key card work. Like, you don't have to fire me. And so people are blaming him because they can't blame the owner because they can't make the owner sell.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Well, and yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that definitely hasn't happened yet. Like we've seen with the Bears organization, have their fans shout, sell the team. That's not happened yet. Let me begin a few more comments here. Robert mentions that Shad's lost his mind in stage keeping Baalke because he osculates upon his son's gluteus maximus. I can't disagree with that, but JTE comes in. I'm not reading the numbers, JTE, sorry. Has to be a change. Just look at Harbaugh history with the Niners and Chargers. Man, listen, we done preached the Niner history up on here. I made sure of that. See, Hef jumps in. TV rights money is worth hundreds of millions of dollars, billions actually, to the NFL on the whole. True. Here's the thing. That's a shared revenue space. Ain't nothing performance on the field going to do about that for the Jacksonville Jaguars, such as they are too. So there's that.
So folks are always asking, can the other owner step in? And I'm like, why would they? Why would the other owner step in? I got another organization who is bringing in money, who is also
not standing in my way of getting rings and prestige. Yes,
I'm giving them all the advice, and all the advice I give them was going to be terrible. Like, I'm going to make
keep doing what you're doing. That's the advice they give. That's Trent
Baalke. If you fire him, I'm sure gonna hire him. You better hold on to him. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's time for him to marry the product on the field with what's taking place in the business and facilities. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Especially fresh off of, being rated one of the worst organizations with that last year, the whole rat infestation thing, et cetera, right?
Oh, yes. Well, the last year, but that was actually a review of the previous year. So they kind of did correct some of those things in the.
Yeah, we haven't gotten the new one yet, is what I mean. That's exactly, yeah. We haven't.
No. We did get the new one. We got the new one this past season. So that was the survey from the year beforehand. So the new one was actually a little bit better. And I'll give them credit on that.
Okay. Was it top 25?
2 years back, technically.
Okay, yeah. The one I was talking about was the review for 2 years ago. Yes, you're correct.
Correct.
Let's see. Look at Tony Khan and crew. That's looking like a dumpster fire.
Is it really? I haven't watched AEW recently, man. I can't tell you. Is it a dumpster fire, man? Y'all wrestling fans need to let me know, man.
I will talk to my guys at 3 Count Thursday with Huddle Up Pink. Big Jim Neese, Matt Muehlheisen, Mikey Byrne, EJ Christian. They should probably be able to guide me on that. Last thing here, real quick, really interesting to see what the NFLPA report looks like for 2025. And I think that's what you were referencing, is that they're a little bit higher than they were last year. They may not be 28th, but like I said, did they clear top 25? I don't know. I'll have to look it up.
Maybe.
That being said, though, we hear about all this and all these issues, the little finger in the building, considering also the structure based that the GM and head coach report to Khan separately. It's now they're actually direct rivals, right? It's like Littlefinger doing battle with Tyrion Lannister. Okay, we're keeping that analogy, I guess. But with all that being in place and a known concept that exists in the building there in Duval, that has to be a deterrent for a Ben Johnson, right?
Well, it has to be a deterrent, but it's not to say it's a bad process in and of itself. I want to be clear in saying there are other NFL teams who have the exact same hierarchy, the exact same alignment as far as their organization is concerned, and it works just fine.
Where both people report separately to the owner. That exists other places.
And the reason it works in those organizations is because the person at the top knows ball. And that's the biggest difference. You have a few owners who actually know what they're doing. And I'm not trying to judge Shad on that too heavily. But I want to be honest about saying what it is. Like, hey, man, he does not know ball in that way. He may
Well,
know it on a level.
you're not breaking news. Let's remind the
Right.
people at large. This is the best roster ever assembled. Was a statement by your not ball knowing owner. I think that's worth mentioning here.
You cannot pay me to say them words, man. That's crazy.
That's why I said it for you.
It's just wow. But no, he said it. He said it, and he apparently believed it. And that's what this process is a doubling down of a belief that this roster in 2024 was the best roster in the history of the Jacksonville Jaguars, which that then would result in, well, of course, then Doug needs to be fired because this was obviously the best roster, so it had to be coaching, and it was coaching on some levels, but no one's asking the question of why the coaching took place in the ways that it did. And I've had this argument with very many people on a few different podcasts and a few different social media threads on the different applications, we'll say. This is a limited roster. It's not the best roster. It's just not. There's no world where that's a truthful statement, but that is a statement from someone that is a professional at CYA. Let me say it that way.
Yeah, well, and as you mentioned before, by the way, and I think this is a point. I'm going to steal a point from T Wiggs of Locked On Jaguars because he says this, and I think it's people talk a lot about scheme and how the scheme was the problem. No. Okay, we were promised more physical play and we didn't get it. That's not scheme. Okay, here's the thing about scheme, and I think I've made this point not just on this show, but also on the Black and Gold Banneret, talking about what was going on in the past 2 years with Gus Malzahn before he got fired. Or as technically he wasn't fired, he parted ways from the program because he got a new job that happened to be a demotion where he also left the buyout on the table. Anyways, that all being said, the element of scheme is when you're limited when you have players that are injured or not talented enough, you can't run through there. You can't make that particular direction. When you have a running back who for 2 years, or a running back position now, I should say, not just Travis Etienne, who is among the worst in yards before first hit, and you can't run the football to the point your quarterback mentions it in the post-mortem of the season. Shouts to Trevor Lawrence, by the way, for his forthcoming statements. Part of that is because your O-line can't do it. So if your O-line can't do it right and they're injured, that takes certain numbers of plays that would have been part of your, get this, scheme off the table. We had this conversation too last year when we had established that with Luke Fortner, according to you, the best backup in all of the NFL at center, they couldn't run in the middle, so they had to keep going outside, which then made things predictable, which then allowed DEs to pin their ears back and attack Trevor, which it caused turnovers and injuries, and it all went to heck. And nothing to do with Doug Peterson. Am I a Doug Peterson stan? No. But the facts of the case are these, and I don't see why there isn't more dispute on how much it wasn't Doug's fault. Doug got fired because he's not a motivator, period. I think that's where it begins and ends for me. Wow.
I mean, I was in agreement that Doug needed to be fired because of the limited, the stagnant offense, the lack of emotion that has nothing to do with the actual physical. Like there are some things, the eye candy, we'll call it, the things that make it a little bit harder on your defense, the thing that make it a little bit easier on your quarterback, the things that you're going to see with a lot of these modern McVay, a lot of these modern Shanahan, a lot of these modern offenses, even Todd Monken, he does it a lot in the run game, like offenses, just the motion, using the whole field and not just trying to use, hash to hash kind of thing. So like in that way, Doug absolutely didn't need to be fired because frankly, he had done it multiple seasons straight, and he also hadn't been able to fix the defense after firing his defensive coordinator the previous season.
Yeah, so after he had scapegoated Caldwell. Let's call it what it is.
So for that purpose alone, he did need to be fired. That's not in dispute for me. The fact of the matter is he needed to be fired with Trent Baalke and not just him instead of Trent Baalke.
We're on record on this show saying that 100%. Yeah, 100%.
So that's just the biggest piece for me is I think that was just viewed a little bit different from Shad for whatever reason. Jaguars, I don't know, man. I don't understand it.
Jaguars, we're back to that.
Because Jaguars. Oh, bro, I said that on 1010 XL yesterday. Like, not even trying to say it. It was just, shout out to Rick Ballou. Had me on, what's the Inside Into the Night. On 1010XL last night. Definitely take a look back on the 1010XL app or on YouTube. They have video on demand. It was a great interview, just 10 minutes talking about the Jags coaching search and such. He was asking me about, hey, who was the Jaguars going to get as their coach? And I'm like, well, I'm not used to the Jaguars ever getting the best thing on the market. So, I can't, so, and that's Ben Johnson. So, I assume we're not going to get him, because Jaguars, and it just came out randomly, and he just bust out laughing, and just kind of threw me off my game.
Hey, he returned the favor. Apparently, you knocked him off his game. He's hosting a damn show. You making him bust a laugh. Check it out, 1010XL.
So overall, I mean, I'm thinking like we got to get into this maybe in our next episode, but we need to have that conversation because everybody and their mama has their favorite person of this Jacksonville Jaguars coaching search, and they're only talking about the positives of those individuals. They're only talking about, hey, man, Ben Johnson. We got to go Ben Johnson. We got to go Ben Johnson because Ben Johnson's this. Cool. Or we got to go Liam Cohen because he's the next.
Oh, so you mean it's an episode involving Travis Holmes. We got to go Liam Cohen. Sorry.
Dang. I'm a Liam Cohen fan. Yes. I am also a fan. I can literally sit here and, again, I think we have to have that conversation. I can make an argument for each one of these coaches, probably the top 5 to 6 guys. And I mean a good, faith, legitimate argument for a lot of these guys. And then there's an entire second half of this where these guys have some true major issues,
glaring flaws,
some potentially critical questions. It may not be flaws, but definitely questions with like 5 of them, even Ben Johnson, and nobody's talking about it. And I want to talk about it. That's all.
Well, we might just have to line that up next edition of the Duval Dive. Well played there, Travis Holmes. Let's get the last few comments in here before we wrap up. If you can't run the ball, you can't win. Robert, I agree.
Facts, man.
JTE jumps in again. Did Cincinnati owner say it was the best roster? How much would the Jags love to have meaningful games in December? Boy, howdy. Listen, as somebody who's not a Jags fan and just covers the team, I would love relevant stuff to do and write about in December. FFSN.
I do think it's funny though, because you're talking about Cincinnati. That's Zach Taylor. That's Press Taylor's brother.
Correct.
And I'll guarantee you, when the Jacksonville Jaguars saw this offense, that is exactly what they were trying to aim for. They wanted the Jacksonville Jaguars to look more like Cincinnati Bengals. They weren't caring as much about the offensive line.
They never had the
trying
roster
to get those
for that, though.
Those fast, athletic offensive linemen. They weren't trying to focus on being a dominant run blocking group. They just wanted to be someone who was able to get in the way and kind of just make this happen. And they wanted to put the whole thing on Trevor Lawrence's shoulders, like the Cincinnati Bengals do with Joe Burrow.
The thing they completely get, and this is not a slight on Joseph Burrow, by the way. Let me be clear. Joey Lee Burrow is good people, but they've never had the receiver core to do that. They've never had Jamar Chase and T. Higgins as bookends, with no disrespect to Marvin Jones, Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley. Oh, a little bit of disrespect to Calvin Ridley. I'm joking. To Calvin Ridley,
it's fine.
To BTJ, to Parker Washington. I will list off receivers until I do it all if I need to. No disrespect to any of them, but no duo is tantamount to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. It's not a thing.
Until you enter BTJ into the conversation, every other receiver you name does not take a step over T. Higgins. Forget Jamar Chase for a second. I'm just talking about T. Higgins, man.
I'm just talking about the second guy. I didn't want to make it about one guy being better than the other, but your point is valid. But sometimes you can find a synergy that makes you better than the sum of the parts. They don't have that yet in the receiver core. And I mean, no disrespect to how long were they missing Evan Ingram? But that was an element that they could create from it. They didn't have it for a lot of the season. I'll tell you what, anyway, so that all being said, everybody runs a variation of the same scheme, sort of, Rob. If we had more time, I'd break into that a little bit more. See, Jags about to be paying the highest paid free agency guard in 2025. Don't rule that out. Let's see, until BTJ and T.
That's what I was laughing at. Yes. Until BTJ and J.
So, we uncorked a lot of good stuff here. We're going to get back together on Friday to talk about some stuff here too. We might get into some of those conversations a little bit more.
Did you hear that, folks? Friday, not Sunday, Friday.
Friday, that's right. Because there's no games on Sunday, Well, there's playoff games, if you're worried about that. This whole Ravens, Bills, most anticipated playoff game of the entire tournament, yada, yada, whatever. I mean, I know personally, representing Fans First Sports Network, I'll be at Kia Center where the Denver Nuggets are visiting the Orlando Magic. But, I can watch a TV while I'm doing that. The punchlines this, though. Thanks for checking in, everybody. Again, awesome participation in the comments. Thank you, JTE, Hef, and Rob, and Lou. I love that we have a Titans fan that will come in and enjoy our chat and heckle us at the same time, man. Shouts to Lou. I like that he's jumping in. Of course, Travis D. Holmes, tell the world. I love that T-Wig enunciated it that hard. He's got the D there for a reason. Travis D. Holmes, tell the world where you can be found.
Hey, man, I can be found on all the socials. Travis D. Holmes, Facebook, Instagram, I don't know, Blue Sky, X. Most importantly, bigcatcountry.com. And if you're finding me here, like and subscribe on the Duval Dive on YouTube. Find us at your favorite podcatchers, Apple, Spotify, I don't know, whatever other podcatchers out there. We're likely on it.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're on it. Like, so
and if we're not,
again, like and subscribe.
If we're not, hit me up. I'm gonna fix it. I promise.
And continue checking out this this series where we're following along with the Big Cat Country coaching tracker, head coaching tracker. Again, we've gone through a lot of the top candidates. I believe tomorrow we have Robert Saleh coming out with Gus Lowe's working on that one. So again, stay tuned. We'll keep knocking these things out, and on the podcast version you get the full 5 to 10 minute episode, whereas you get the YouTube short. So again, link up with both of us. We are here. Like and subscribe, and we appreciate you guys as always. Please tell them where you can be found, sir.
Absolutely an honor, joy, and privilege to do it all with you and my personal champion, Travis D. Holmes. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky. That's right. I'm one of the cool kids. I'm on Blue Sky, Travis. And of course, all of that at the SOTG. Find me as the student of the game on Facebook. Check out my writings for the Fans First Sports Network. The aforementioned Jacksonville Jaguar and Orlando Magic pieces are found there. My work covering UCF with the Black and Gold Banneret and the Night Shift podcast. Make sure you check out both of those too. Subscribe to that YouTube channel as well. And yeah, if you're going to subscribe to the Duval Dive, folks, hit the notification bell so you don't have to come and check on us all the time. We'll come to you. It's a service. It's a beautiful thing. And I think that covers all the places you can find me immediately. So with that in mind, thanks again to everybody who jumped in and contributed to part of the effort and the conversation here. But until next time, everyone, class dismissed.